The story starts with our protagonist, Vans, who ventured into the big city 10 years ago, driven by his admiration for it. However, what seemed like a dream turned into a disappointing reality. Every day, Vans was forced to board a crowded train and face greater responsibilities in his exhausting job. Fatigue and monotony had reached a point where he had even lost interest in the things that used to impassion him. His days had become routine and boring, with no significant changes. After another exhausting day at work, Vans arrived at his apartment yearning for his peaceful and beautiful hometown. Closing his eyes, Vans allowed himself to daydream and found himself transported to a completely strange world. To his surprise, he realized that his body had transformed into that of a 2-year-old child. Confused and bewildered, Vans began to explore this new environment, trying to understand what was happening. In the midst of his confusion, a maid, who appeared to be 12 years old, burst into the room urgently warning him to stay away from the window. Her behavior towards him was different, as if he wasn't the Vans she was used to taking care of. The maid, noticing the strange and complicated words coming out of young Vans' mouth, struggled to calm him down and ensure his safety. Vans, still processing what had happened, tried to explain to the maid that he was, in fact, the same Vans she knew, but had undergone an inexplicable transformation. The maid listened cautiously but didn't seem convinced. Nonetheless, she swiftly moved to protect Vans from any nearby danger. Vans found himself in a state of confusion and surprise, realizing that his body was now that of a 2-year-old named Vans Nefiri. He had awakened in a completely different world from his own, feeling as if he had been reincarnated, since he remembered his original name and also the names of his siblings, Mersha, Yarda, and Sesto. Furthermore, he had information about his father, who in this new reality was called Duke Jalpapolati Ferdio. Mealtime arrived, gathering Vans, his father, and his siblings around the table. Vans' personal maids were also present, as the young boy was still too young to eat on his own. Despite his new appearance and surroundings, Vans retained some memories from his previous life in Japan, making him feel that even the food in this new world was not real. Amidst this strangeness, Vans' father, the Duke, turned to Yarda, asking her what she had learned that day. It was a family tradition to have conversations with each of the children during dinner, and Vans was no exception, despite his young age. His response astonished everyone present, as he spoke with a maturity and knowledge that did not correspond to his 2-year-old self. The father was delighted to hear Vans speak so eloquently and commented that, despite being just a child, he possessed exceptional intelligence, noting that he surely had a great affinity for fire magic, just like him. The Duke was thrilled and eagerly awaited for Vans' magical power to manifest. In a world where magic exists, and the 4 elementals are essential for the protection of the royal family and residents, our story takes place. The Ferdio family is a noble family specialized in the military power of a great military nation. This world seems to exist in an intermediate point between medieval times and the modern world, where conventional weapons like swords, arrows, and bows coexist with magic. Society in this world values healing magic, relegating those who possess other types of magic to be humiliated. In addition to humans, other races such as elves, dwarves, and beasts also inhabit this world, although it is rare to see them as they have built their own cultures in secluded areas. Our protagonist, named Vans, is considered a prodigy thanks to his exceptional intelligence. At a young age, he meets Isparta, the most skilled butler, who becomes his mentor, teaching him complex and sophisticated subjects that don't correspond to a 2-year-old child. Day after day, Vans learns sword techniques from Isparta, and after turning 5, he is able to fight on the same level as older apprentices known as young warriors. Utilizing his knowledge of judo and karate acquired from his life in Japan, Vans becomes unstoppable in swordplay despite his young age. The vice captain of the kingdom's knights observes Vans' talent and decides to increase the number of lessons for him. It will be himself who teaches him sword handling, providing him with exhaustive training that leaves him exhausted in every sense. The vice captain sees incredible potential in Vans, but is also aware of the weight of expectations and how difficult it will be for him to fulfill them. 3 years have passed since Vans was called a prodigy, but one day, his father suddenly appears. Disillusioned and angry, he tells Vans that he is a disappointment and that if he kills him right then and there, it will all end. This revelation leaves Vans shocked and confused, not understanding why his father considers him a disappointment. 2 years after the previous events, Vans, a 6-year-old boy, delves into deep thoughts. He has come to a distressing conclusion. His siblings, aware of his sword skills and sharp intelligence, will soon try to end his life. All signs point to him being the one destined to lead the family and control the power and wealth that come with that honor. Determined to avoid a tragic fate, Vans decides to abandon his role as a prodigy and act like an ordinary child. Accompanied by his loyal maid and a small group of secretly protecting soldiers, he heads to the bustling city market. There, he immerses himself in the fun games and laughter typical of his young age, eager to taste the sweet freedom. As he strolls past the colorful stalls, a man crosses his path, dragging a child tied with a rope. His voice shouts for everyone to move aside, unaware that he is disrespecting someone of noble birth. Van's bodyguards are about to draw their swords, but he stops them, intrigued by the situation. With a soft yet firm voice, Vans approaches the man and asks about the child's situation. The man, showing no remorse, claims that the child is his property, and he has every right to sell him as a slave. Filled with indignation, Van's father brutally strikes the young boy for being worthless. Anger and compassion take hold of Vans, who feels the need to intervene to prevent the child's suffering and possibly save his life. At that precise moment, a woman appears out of nowhere, inquiring about the renowned Mare Company. Introducing herself as Rosaline, she offers to serve as an intermediary for the trade. Vans is intrigued by this strange encounter and decides to inquire about the selling price of the slave. Rosaline delicately mentions that the requested value is 3 large silver coins. After the purchase, Rosaline uses her magical ability and brands Kamshin with a slavery symbol, effectively transforming him into Van's servant. This mark acts as a magical contract in this world, impossible to disobey. Feeling guilty about his decision, Vans realizes that he must treat Kamshin properly. He takes him to his luxurious mansion and assigns him as his personal caretaker. Kamshin quickly adapts to his new responsibilities, but his thirst for knowledge drives him to search for Vans throughout the mansion, as he has been summoned by the deputy chief of the knights for training. Upon meeting, Vans confesses to Kamshin that he wants to avoid the training sessions and orders him to hide it. Without hesitation, and obeying his new master, Kamshin lies to the deputy chief of the knights, saying that he hasn't seen Vans anywhere. The deputy chief is annoyed by the lack of cooperation and decides to take matters into his own hands. He sees potential in Kamshin and decides to personally train him to ensure he can properly take care of Vans. The day of the Ferdio family ceremony had arrived, a very important occasion where the magical compatibility of its members would be determined. The family circle was gathered, filled with anticipation and anxiety about what this event would reveal. Vans, the youngest son of the family, was excited but also a bit nervous. However, his fears came true when it was revealed that he hadn't inherited any of the 4 main magical elements. His magical compatibility was limited solely to alchemy, the ability to create tools using a clear understanding of material composition. But in this world, common blacksmiths were capable of making those same tools without using magic, making Van's ability considered useless and worthless. In this world, magical compatibility determined a person's social status. With no relevant magical aptitude, Vans became a disgrace to the prestigious lineage of the Ferdio family. The father, indignant and ashamed, unsheathed his sword with the intention of beheading his own son as punishment for his lack of magic. However, at that moment, Mersha, Van's older brother, appeared. Mersha had inherited wind magic from their grandmother and understood perfectly what it meant to be looked down upon for not inheriting their father's fire magic. He quickly stepped between his furious father and Vans, arguing that his brother had the chance to be useful to the kingdom in a different way. He explained that he was studying distant territories loyal to the kingdom, and sending Vans as a feudal lord to one of those territories could be a promising idea. Despite the Duke's initial doubts, he considered it an interesting alternative, and decided to accept it, ordering Vans to leave the kingdom as soon as possible. Mersha apologized to his brother for what had happened and expressed his understanding. Both shared the feeling of being rejected due to their lack of magical compatibility. Vans thanked Mersha for protecting him and giving him an opportunity he didn't plan on wasting. And so, Vans prepared for his new life as a feudal lord in a remote village. He saw this opportunity as a way to live comfortably and finally find his favorite place in the world. With enthusiasm and determination, he set off for this new territory, excited for the adventures and challenges that awaited him. On his way to the remote village, Vans encounters a team of adventurers ready to take him safely. However, some members of the team complain about the simple missions they are assigned and wonder why they accepted this particular mission. It turns out that the assignment comes from the Ferdo family, a family they cannot refuse. Suddenly, Vans bursts into the adventurer's room and introduces himself as Van Ni Ferdo. The boy gets excited upon seeing Ordo, a big and strong adventurer with a massive sword. Vans asks him thrilling questions about his sword and if he is a seasoned hero. One of the adventurers responds by saying that the heavier a sword is, the more power it holds. After asking so many questions, Vans retreats to prepare for the upcoming journey. The next day, as they prepare for the trip, Mersha decides to send 10 carriages and additional escorts as a precaution. Despite the team's opposition, Vans decides to bring Till, his loyal servant, on the adventure. In addition, Arbs, a night escort, will join Vans on his journey. In a rush to pack all their belongings, Jalpa, Vans' father, comments that Arbs will retire soon and he will go on the trip to enjoy his retirement and witness Vans' academic progress. Vans is not very happy with the decision to have his father accompany him, and Dee asks if everything is alright. Vans replies that he is glad that so many people care about him and want him to arrive safely, but he is concerned about being sent to the border. Till mentions that many people wanted to join Vans, but only he had the opportunity thanks to Mersha. Before departing, Kanchan makes a comment stating that he is willing to give his life for Vans no matter what. He mentions that he lives for Vans and will protect him with everything he has. As Vans leaves, he looks out the window and notices that the carriages do not have the Ferdo family crest, leading him to conclude that his father wants to get him out without anyone knowing. He decides that he needs to erase his existence at all costs. Suddenly, a friend who is the daughter of a guard approaches Vans and asks where he is going. A crowd gathers to bid him farewell, embarrassing him. Vans complains to the escorts, saying that his father ordered them to keep everything a secret. The escorts respond that Mr. D ordered the farewell, and that Vans deserves a proper send-off. They decide to send an escort to clear the way, and the caravan that will take Vans sets off. Hours later, as night falls, they decide to camp in the forest. Vans gets excited to have a barbecue in front of him and realizes that Ortho, the adventurer with over 20 years of experience, is a perfect leader for his group of escorts. He thanks Ortho for the food and for taking care of him. This gesture surprises Ortho. Continuing the journey and after several camping sites, the adventurers tell Vans some anecdotes as they get closer to their destination. However, they start to notice something strange as they approach. Finally, Dee tells Vans that they are about to arrive, but they discover that the city is under attack. In a peaceful village on the other side of the wall, a group of villagers is in danger. The news of the possible arrival of bandits has sparked fear in everyone, but also the determination to defend their homes and loved ones. They estimate that at least 40 opponents will face them, a threat they cannot ignore. However, not everyone is convinced to join the battle. Tension hangs in the air as some villagers express their doubts and concerns. For some, serving Vans and the Firdo is their life purpose, but for others, facing such a dangerous situation puts their own lives at risk. Otho, excited for the opportunity to fight, requests a group of escorts to carry out a preliminary attack before joining the rest in the main battle. Espada denies his request, stating that Dee, with her power, would be able to fight against more than 50 mages. However, another guard expresses concern about Dee's life and who would rule in case she died. Espada offers himself again as bait behind the cart. Espada pleads with Vans to allow him to be useful for once and be the one to act as bait. Vans, concerned for Espada's safety, reminds him of the dangers this entails. However, Vans decides to be the bait himself, despite everyone's objections. He reminds Espada that he has just retired. Otho and his friends that their duty is to bring him to the village and not fight, and the knights that they must serve their father and not him. Additionally, he reveals his concern for Dee, whom he considers his sister, and shows his determination not to lose her. Kamshin, as Vans' slave, remembers his duty to die for him, but also understands the importance of protecting the good people around him. Vans orders everyone to attack from left to right while he faces the others, asking for his identity not to be revealed to the duchy. The adventurers decide to join Vans no matter what he says, and the knights, led by Espada, also join in, reminding Vans of his duties as a noble and promising not to leave him alone. With his voice raised, Espada orders Otho and the adventurers to attack from the right, Dee and the knights from the left, while he creates a protective barrier. The others stand prepared in case of an emergency. In that moment, Otho has an epiphany and changes his perspective towards the nobles. He is impressed by Vans' bravery, willing to risk his life for them. Though he doesn't know him well, Otho is willing to risk his own to see Vans become a great lord. The battle begins as the bandits attack Vans' carriage. Kamshin stands as a protective shield while everyone disembarks from the carriage. Vans orders the villagers to search for medicines to attend to the wounded. With determination, Vans is set on protecting his newfound family and helping them in whatever way necessary. The battle raged on noisily. The bandits believed they were on the verge of gaining control of the adventurers' assault, and incessantly ordered arrows to be fired. However, at that moment, D, the subcommander of the Ferdo family, appeared to join the group of adventurers. Meanwhile, a mysterious wall rose up, blocking the enemy's view, and a new opponent emerged before them. The sorceress of the group launched a powerful attack towards the enemy, but realized she had to wait at least 10 seconds before being able to use it again. It seemed she was in danger and wouldn't survive until then. However, right at that instant, Vans and Kamshin appeared out of nowhere, courageously confronting the enemy, and being successful in their defeat. Although some of the enemies managed to escape, the majority were annihilated, leaving the team of adventurers satisfied and believing that, by fighting together, they could complete the mission. But at that moment, some villagers approached, offering the adventurers work as demon hunters. Although the offer was appealing, the group declined, as their priority was to accompany Vans on his journey. The battle and the way Vans fought raised questions within the group, especially for Otho. They had raised Vans as a noble child, but had never seen a child willing to sacrifice their life for others. His movements also seemed unusual for someone his age. Despite all these mysteries, the fight had made it clear that protecting Vans was worth it. Otho was determined to be part of Van's life and witness his growth. On the other hand, Till argued with Vans for getting involved in the fight. At that moment, the sorceress interrupted their discussion by telling Vans that he was very young, but had already made the girls cry. Vans responded that he was only trying to be honest, especially with his sister, because she was very important to him. The sorceress changed the subject and asked Vans where he had learned to use the sword. Vans pointed to his uncle Knight and confirmed that he had been his teacher. The sorceress was surprised and asked again if it was true. Vans nodded and she humbly thanked him for saving her life. But Vans, being polite, asked her not to worry and forget about it. However, the sorceress refused, stating that it was impossible. After expressing her gratitude to Vans for saving her, Sword caught his attention and informed him that the villagers were gathered at the entrance. Excited, Vans quickly approached to greet them and thank them for their support. Vans introduced himself to the villagers as the new town manager sent by his family. The villagers, surprised, listened attentively. At that moment, an elder named Rhonda approached Vans and thanked him for his help. He explained that the town had been constantly attacked by bandits, which had drastically reduced the population from 150 to just 100 in half a year. They had been attacked for the third time that very day. Still taken aback by the town's difficult situation, Vans apologized for not arriving sooner. However, the grateful elder Rhonda invited him to his house to discuss the town's situation in detail. Once at Rhonda's house, the old man shared with Vans the sad reality they were facing. He mentioned that the town's major issue was the high level of taxes, and many villagers were considering abandoning their homes due to economic hardships. Despite the elder's negative comments, Vans refused to accept that taking care of the town wasn't worth it because of its size. Convinced that he could make a difference, he proposed 3 challenging yet achievable goals to improve the situation. Young Vans gathered all the villagers to explain his ideas and propose changes. During the meeting, they discussed how to utilize available resources, such as wooden bars used as fences, to create trenches and enhance the village's defense. However, not all villagers were convinced to stay. Many were in desperate situations, having to sell their children to pay off debts. Vans understood their frustration and made an effort to calm them down, urging cooperation and promising to seek long-term solutions. They decided to build an earthen wall around the village to strengthen their protection. Though they didn't have anywhere to sleep, Vans suggested taking refuge in the carriages, not wanting to evict old Rhonda from his home. Exhausted but hopeful, everyone headed to rest. In that moment, Vans reflected on the future of the village. He realized he couldn't rely on the powers of the other 4 elements, but he could use his own power of creation to lead his beloved village forward. With his determination renewed, Vans looked towards the horizon and prepared to face the challenges ahead. He knew the path wouldn't be easy, but he was convinced that his love for Ferdio and his commitment to its inhabitants would transform it into a prosperous and secure place. During a meeting to decide how to protect the village, Vans proposed a bold plan: to attack before being attacked by building a catapult. However, both Espada and D had reservations about the effectiveness of this idea. Espada questioned Vans about how the catapult would work, as they are generally more appropriate for attacking large structures such as towers or walls. Despite the doubts, Vans insisted on loading the catapult with a considerable amount of stones to increase its power and precision. D suggested that Syl and Turch be in charge of making the attack with the catapult even more effective. Espada, more satisfied with the execution of the proposal, was now interested in how Vans would build the catapult. It was then that Vans revealed his magical construction ability and offered to build the catapult using his magic. Later, with the village temporarily secure, Otho and the other adventurers decided to go monster hunting to earn some money. Vans decided to join them, but Otho asked him to stay behind and clear the way by cutting down some trees. Kamshin showed Vans a giant tree, who, with a hint of skepticism, took a piece of wood and attempted to apply his construction magic. Visualizing the fibers of the wood, magic began to flow through his body from deep within his stomach. Aware that the result could be something strange or brittle, Vans focused on his magic and tried to weave a thread to strengthen the wood. To his surprise, instead of a fragile block of wood, a block of wood with a plastic-like appearance appeared. Vans was filled with joy at the result and began applying his magic to every piece of wood he could find. Till and Kamshin were amazed by what Vans had achieved and asked him what he had exactly created. Although not entirely sure, Vans excitedly informed them that he had created a block of nanofiber wood. Till, confused, asked what exactly that was, to which Kamshin responded that it was stronger than conventional wood. Unexpectedly, Otho and his fearless group returned to the village with the remains of a fierce creature they had hunted. The beast was imposing and fiercely formidable, but among the crowd was Vans, a young and talented wizard, whose curiosity was awakened by something more than the monster itself. His attention was drawn to the blocks of wood they had used to demonstrate the creature's resilience. Intrigued by the apparent strength of those blocks, Vans proposed to Otho to try testing their resilience by throwing one against a stone. Otho, a strong and courageous man, decided to accept the challenge and threw the block with all his might. To his astonishment, the block emerged unscathed from the impact, causing a mix of surprise and admiration among the onlookers. It was evident that those blocks of wood possessed an extraordinary resilience. Motivated by that discovery, Vans decided to put his magical abilities to the test. On the way home, his companion Kamshin asked him if his magical power would have depleted after such usage. But Vans, confident in his abilities, proposed to prove the opposite by creating weapons from some treasures they had collected in their adventures. Concentrating his magic and visualizing perfect weapons in his mind, Vans began to create. First, a regular-sized katana with an incredibly sharp blade emerged for Kamshin. The warrior, surprised and grateful, expressed his gratitude to Vans, promising to cherish the gift as one of the most valuable treasures in the world. Next, Vans forged an axe for Till, also known as a lover of such weapons. When she beheld Van's magnificent creation, she was left speechless. But overcoming her initial overwhelm, Till expressed her love for axes and assured Vans that the gift had touched her heart in the best possible way. Filled with joy by the results of his magical powers, Vans pondered on how he could use his gift for the good of the village. After seeing everything finished, Vans is thrilled by the immense magical reserve he has acquired. The idea of building a house with that power intrigues him, and he begins to imagine the deep and sturdy pillars that will support the structure. With each thought, the pillars seem to grow in size in his mind. Following his vision, Vans continues mentally designing the floor and roof of the house. However, when he finally starts building, he realizes that the physical elements seem even bigger than he had imagined. With determination, Vans sets about constructing the different spaces of the house, from the rooms to the living room and kitchen. Soon, after much effort, the house is ready. Filled with excitement, Vans went to ask Espada if his house was big enough. Espada, in a sarcastic tone, told him it was still small. This response astounded Espada, Till, and Kamshin, who couldn't believe the power and materials Vans had used in the construction. Kamshin even declared that Vans' creation magic was more useful than the magic of the four elements, which left everyone surprised. Suddenly, Otho and the other members of the adventure appeared and were impressed by the mansion that wasn't there before. They quickly asked Vans what had happened. Without hesitation, Vans explained that he had built a house with his magic. Amazed by Vans' incredible power, Otho and the others rushed into the forest to gather wood so that Vans could build houses for all of them. As Vans worked, a crowd of villagers approached him with requests, as Dee had spread the rumor that the boy was a talented builder. At first, the work of making and remodeling houses didn't seem as fun for Vans, but he knew that seeing the inhabitants happy would be worth it. With courage, Vans got to work to fulfill all of the villagers' requests. The town was in search of a solution to strengthen their income and face the upcoming challenges. After building the wall and houses, Vans, the talented builder and designer, realized that he needed to find a way to trade and generate income for the town. One morning, after waking up and enjoying a comforting breakfast prepared by Till, Vans felt happy and at peace. However, Espada, aware of the importance of protecting the town and facing the upcoming challenges, broke the emotional moment and mentioned the need to trade with the outside world. Spada informed Vans that there were no more spices or ingredients necessary for the baked goods that he enjoyed so much. Vans felt overwhelmed by the news and panicked, realizing that he needed to find a solution quickly. Seeking ideas, Vans asked for the collaboration of the other town residents. Kamshin suggested selling the wooden blocks that Vans had built, but he rejected the idea since only he had the ability to make them. Then, Till suggested hunting adventurers as a way to generate income. But Vans also rejected this idea because that was Otho's responsibility and belonged to his activities. At that moment, Vans realized that he needed to find a unique and original idea to generate income. As time passed, despite their search and attempts, the solution to their problem seemed to slip through their fingers and worry reflected on their faces. But suddenly, a friend adventurer of Otho came to the rescue, offering a new perspective. This adventurer friend mentioned that everyone loves Vans and doesn't want anything bad to happen to his gift, so the child decides to take action and create something outstanding. Vans gets to work and immerses himself in the task of creating a resilient shield. To test his creation, Vans asks Kamshin to strike the shield with his sword. To everyone's surprise, Kamshin's wooden sword manages to split Vans' shield in two. This impresses everyone, but Vans quickly intervenes to calm Otho's friend and promises to repair the shield, making it even more resistant. At that moment, Otho appears and wonders about the commotion going on. As he approaches his friend, he realizes that Vans has repaired the shield. Although Otho tries to capture his friend's attention, he is too excited about Vans' achievement and pays no attention. Regardless of the lack of attention, Otho offers Vans a carriage full of materials. Otho reveals that at the end of the forest, there is a great reserve of minerals like copper, iron, silver, and even some gold. However, Otho explains the inconvenience of the distance and the lack of resources to exploit those minerals. Vans is impressed by this acquisition and delves into his thoughts about the amount of minerals hidden in the mountain. He decides to use the iron to create something, although he is aware of the difficulties of infusing magic into iron. He recognizes the need to melt it to remove impurities and ensure the purity of his creation. At that moment, Otho's friend jumps excitedly, asking Vans for a double-edged sword. In a blink of an eye, Vans creates a powerful sword for him. This success surprises the present adventurers, who start making requests to Vans to replace their combat gear. Spada, one of the adventurers, finds the discovery of minerals in the mountains peculiar, and wonders if there could be a golem nearby, as it has been a long time since they have heard of one. Otho responds that they don't have one, but the possibility of finding it could be true since nearby dungeons usually house iron or stone golems, which are producers of those minerals. With the opportunity to find a dungeon, Spada presents Vans with the possibility of changing the fortune of their town, as they could obtain a great amount of goods by exploring it. Vans quickly understands the magnitude of this opportunity and how life in their town could drastically change if they managed to find a dungeon and acquire the valuable minerals inside it. As it is logical, all weapons, jewelry, and other treasures came from mysterious dungeons. Every time an adventurer discovered a new dungeon, they had to notify the guild, which had the right to open a branch and extract the precious resources. But there was a young man named Vans who didn't want to share his discovery with the guild. Vans, aware that if he notified the guild, a great influx of adventurers and merchants would be unleashed in his town, which could lead to a scarcity of food, decided to take a different path. He said nothing and decided to enter the dungeon on his own, convinced it was the best choice for him and his town. He knew that if he told his family, his dungeon would be stolen and his village disrupted. Vans was considered a burden to his own family, so he decided to act in secrecy and protect his discovery. In addition to extracting resources for his town, Vans also thought about defense. He had successfully built a series of houses and plans to stockpile weapons before the arrival of traders. Defense was crucial, and the outer wall of his village was almost complete, offering protection against any external threat. But Vans didn't stop there. He decided to use his wit and skills to create a simple ballista made of sturdy leather. This ballista was equipped with a front shield, allowing him to shoot without worrying about enemy counterattacks. It was an ingenious invention that increased the defensive capacity of his village. In addition to the ballista, Vans placed strategic towers on the perimeters of his village, installing ballistas at each point. This further reinforced their defense and gave them an advantage over any enemy that might attempt to attack. One day, Vans had a talk with Kamshin, his loyal companion. He asked Kamshin about his aspirations, and the faithful friend proudly responded that his greatest aspiration was to protect Vans. This statement filled Vans' heart with joy and determination, knowing that he had someone he could trust and rely on in his quest to protect his town and its valuable treasures from the dungeons. After several days, Vans worked hard to fortify the village. He installed fortified gates, finished building the walls, and installed the ballistas. The village now looked like a small fortress, ready to face any threat that may arise. However, differences began to arise between Di and Espada regarding the time that would be given to Master Wong to improve his skills. Di argued that war was not just about people swinging swords, while Espada believed it was dangerous to wait. Vans intervened in the discussion, saying it made no sense to fight over something that couldn't be changed, referring to Master Wong's defensive magical compatibility. The construction of the trenches around the village was completed. Initially, their purpose was to serve as water transportation in the town, but due to the lack of water at that moment, they became an additional defense by raising a bridge over them. Suddenly, someone shouted that bandits were attacking the village. Vans gave the order for everyone to seek refuge behind the wall, and commanded the gates to be closed once the citizens were inside. He was surprised to see everyone following his orders despite their fear of the fight. Vans reminded them that as a feudal lord, he couldn't afford to see his people fearful, and that he would take responsibility and lead them. He asked them to help him, as defending the village was something he couldn't do alone. Together, they could protect their village. Vans managed to boost their morale, and the citizens declared that they would fight for him and the well-being of the village. Vans entrusted Di to lead the defense forces, but then they realized that the approaching bandits were being chased by 40 armored dragons. These dragons were immune to common weapons and posed an even greater threat. At that moment, Vans ordered the ballistas to be loaded while Di, confident in their victory, exclaimed that today they would barbecue the armored dragons. The situation was becoming increasingly challenging, but the village was determined to fight and protect their home. The time had come to confront the enemy invasion of dragons that was ravaging the kingdom. The brave warriors found themselves in a difficult position, surrounded by a horde of dragons with few escape options. However, a ballista team was present, providing a potential opportunity to fight back. The battle began with the band of fighters valiantly fighting, but soon they were overwhelmed by the ferocity of the dragons. With no way out, many fell into the pits as victims of these winged beasts. However, the ballista team didn't give up and decided to aim at the dragons. The first shot was fired and, at first glance, it seemed to miss. The arrows disappeared upon contact with the dragons, but upon closer inspection, it was discovered that they had managed to inflict significant damage to the wave of dragons. Incredibly, they had killed 10 of these formidable creatures in a single volley from the ballista's force. He, aware that they were running out of ballista arrows, desperately sought more ammunition. They approached Vans, who had experience in arrow making, and pleaded with them to produce more as quickly as possible. With their sharp wit, Vans decided to make wooden arrows while Di ordered the few remaining iron arrows to be shot. Tension grew as the wooden arrows were prepared. Every second was valuable as the dragons continued their relentless assault. Finally, the wooden arrows were shot and surprisingly, they dealt great damage. Although not as effective as the iron ones, they managed to penetrate the dragon's armor, leaving visible marks of battle on their scaled bodies. The crucial moment arrived with another volley from the ballista. This time, the arrows found their targets with precision and efficacy, eradicating the remaining dragons. The ballista team had managed to defeat these fearsome creatures, using only 60 arrows in total, much to everyone's amazement. As the battle came to an end, Vans observed that only 30 bandits had survived. Di, an ally of Vans known for their firm hand, threatened the bandits with the same fate as the dragons if they resisted being captured. However, they pleaded to work for Vans instead of being sold as slaves. Aware of the atrocities these bandits had committed, Vans made a difficult decision. They decided to call the authorities, and until they arrived, the bandits would work for the village. It was a form of redemption and an opportunity to help rebuild what they had destroyed. Vans assigned the former bandits to dismember the dragons, a tedious but necessary task in order to use the creatures' meat as resources for the village. 3 days of intense labor passed, but they finally succeeded. In gratitude for their hard work, Vans decided to prepare a feast using the meat of the slain dragons. Congratulating the people for their effort and dedication, they all raised a toast for a new beginning and the hope of a better future. Vans' team was impressed by the quality of the swords they had created with magic to dismember the dragons. Now, everyone longed to have weapons of the same quality. Vans' fame as a skilled weapon forger quickly spread throughout the village and beyond. In a conversation among the citizens, the idea emerged to turn this place wounded by adversity into a better place. In honor of the fallen families and with the desire to leave a positive legacy, they concluded that Vans would be the architect of that change. With their ability and leadership, they would make the village a prosperous and safe place for all. After an intense monster hunting expedition, Vans and his loyal servant, Mr. Till, return triumphantly to the territory that welcomes them. The village of Hasimura greets them with open arms and a warm welcome. Although Vans cannot help but feel a special connection with Mr. Till, their social status prevents them from giving in to their impulses. Meanwhile, some merchants approach the village of Hasimura with the intention of selling their merchandise. Vans spots their arrival from afar and patiently waits for them to reach the village to speak with them. Once they approach, Vans stops them and requests identification. The merchants, Bell and Lango, feel intimidated by Van's power and imposing presence, but they introduce themselves properly. Recognizing them, Vans decides to allow them to enter the village. Vans has transformed the village of Hasimura into a true fortress, with houses equipped with modern technology, providing a safe and comfortable environment for its inhabitants. The leader of the territory, Vans, is interested in the merchandise that Bell and Lango have to sell, dragon shells they obtained during their last hunt. However, when Vans accompanies them to the warehouse to see the material, they are met with an overwhelming amount of tons of products. It is clear that two people will not be able to move all that weight in a single day. Aware of the situation and in search of a solution, Vans, Bell, and Lango come to an agreement. They will move all the material in a few months' time. The merchants will have time to hire additional labor, and Vans will be able to organize his activities more efficiently. Bell approached Vans, a friendly and clever merchant, with a proposal in mind. The neighboring villages were going through difficult times, and Bell thought they could help by selling them meat at a low price. However, instead of accepting the deal, Vans surprisingly decided to give the meat to the needy villages. Bell was bewildered, thinking that Vans was a true savior. As the days went by, Vans showcased the exceptional quality of the weapons he had to offer to the local merchants. Each one of them shone with skill and expertise. The merchants were fascinated with the weapons and bought so many that they even acquired some for their own use. The village gained a reputation for having superior weapons, and Vans took advantage of it. However, Vans had a request for Bell and Lango. He wanted them to advertise all the products and services offered in the village, but the diversity and quantity of products overwhelmed them. Together, they reflected on the best way to do it and concluded that they needed a centralized store where everything would be available. Bell took on the challenge and became the store manager. Bell was taken aback when Vans fulfilled his promise to build a store near the town entrance in just a few days. He was thrilled at the prospect of being able to sell his products and improve his quality of life. After 2 weeks, all the necessary supplies arrived to start the business. On the other hand, Kamshin, Till, and Vans decided to explore the surroundings of the village in search of a nearby river. Finding a water source would be crucial for the town's supply. After a difficult journey, they finally found a river and determined its exact location. With the river's location in hand, they began construction on the village's water supply system. Kamshin, Lu, and Abu used their magical powers to assist with the excavation, while Vans strengthened the walls with his creation magic. Together, they worked tirelessly to build a canal that would carry water from the river to the town. At an astonishing pace, they were nearing the town in just 8 hours. However, the intensity of the work had exhausted Kamshin, Lu, and Abu. Vans, aware of their fatigue, ordered them to take a well-deserved break. It was important to take care of their health and ensure they were in optimal condition to continue with the construction. Finally, at dawn the next day, the canal was complete. Everyone celebrated the success of their work. However, Vans knew that there was still a pending task. The water flowing through the canal was not safe to drink, so he proposed building a purifying device at the end of the canal. The town needed clean drinking water to ensure their well-being. Everyone agreed, and once again they got to work. As Vans and his team focused on this new project, concerns arose about possible floods during the rainy season. Vans met with a wise man named Espada to discuss this situation. Together, they devised a plan. They would build an artificial lake behind the town as a water reservoir, controlling the flow into the canal. This would ensure that the town would not be at risk of floods. With renewed determination, however, in the midst of the lake construction, something inexplicable happened. The news quickly spread throughout the town and everyone rushed to where Vans lived. Upon arrival, they asked him to go immediately to the lake. It seemed that something strange was happening. Vans and Espada hurried to the lake, and what they found there left them breathless. A humanoid figure emerged from the water, leaving everyone in awe. They had never witnessed anything like it before. The figure had an intriguing presence, and the whole town eagerly awaited Van's decision. In the village, there was a strange humanoid creature. It was known as an Abgalu, a kind of mermaid-like being that was extremely difficult to come across. Curious, the villagers decided to approach and establish a relationship with this mysterious creature. The village leader, Vans, took the lead in approaching the Abgalu. Hoping to gain its trust, Vans asked the villagers to bring meat and fruits as offerings. As the village watched, the creature approached Vans, surrounded by its protectors. Warriors unsheathed their swords, ready to protect their leader. At the riverbank, the Abgalu spoke with Vans. Surprisingly, it turned out to be a young girl. She enjoyed the food they offered and was amazed that it was Vans who had slain the feared dragon, obtaining its meat. A strange connection began to form between them. At dawn, Till, a young villager, burst into Van's room, shouting that they were under attack. A group of Abgalis had occupied the river and seemed on the brink of attacking the village. The ballista force was prepared to defend themselves, awaiting an order to attack. It appeared that the Abgalis were occupying the canal towards the village as they considered the shell dragon a deity. The leader of the Abgalis demanded to speak with Vans, which led Vans to approach the village platform to meet him. He turned out to be the father of the girl Vans had met the day before. Grateful to Vans for protecting his daughter, the Abgalu leader assured that Vans must be a powerful magician to have killed the dragon. It had all been a misunderstanding. The Abgalu leader was there to accept the marriage between his daughter, Lotta, and Vans. The news left Vans stunned, as at his young age of 10, the idea of marriage was far from his thoughts. Terrified and unsure how to react, he decided to confront the situation. Determined to resolve the misunderstanding, Vans headed to Lotta Vesta's house. There, he met with the Abdalu chief, who explained that the reason behind the marriage proposal was the need to find a strong husband for Lotta Prioria, as her home was now inhabited by shell dragons and many of her followers had lost their lives. However, Vans adamantly refused the request, explaining that he had only offered his help to solve the dragon problem and not to enter into marriage. Determined to find a solution for both villages, Vans returned to the villa and set a plan in motion. He designed a new form of housing submerged in the lake for the Abgalu village, with the aim of providing rest and peaceful interaction between the Abgalu citizens and the villa's residents. This new concept of housing allowed for greater coexistence and cooperation between the two villages. However, the tranquility didn't last long as Vans and his loyal sword noticed the need to build a wall to protect the lake. This wall was necessary to keep potential enemies at bay and ensure the safety of both villages. However, this construction would require an increase in the villa's population to be able to maintain and protect the extensive territory that surrounded the lake. Sword and Vans agreed to design an expansion plan, giving a star-shaped form to the village with walls ranging from 6 to 10 meters in height, thus reinforcing its protection. Just as they were discussing the details, Lou and Abu burst into the room with urgent news. Messengers had arrived at the villa with information about a possible attack from Count Ferdinand, who had previously occupied the territory. It was a critical moment that required immediate action from Vans and all the villagers. Vans, the feudal lord, had summoned 2 messengers who arrived at that very moment. The door opened and an elegant woman and a noble-looking girl entered. Vans welcomed them into his home, and as they introduced themselves, we found out that the woman's name was Panamera Karakayan, recently promoted to the title of Viscountess. On the other hand, the girl turned out to be the younger sister of Count Ferdinand, who had suggested they meet. Count Ferdinand wanted to gather information about his opponent, Vans, and reach an agreement with him, so he sent his sister Panamera as a companion. Panamera couldn't comprehend Vans' choice as the feudal lord and expressed her doubts. Vans calmly replied that he had no compatibility with the 4 magical elements, and they had sent him there merely on whim. Resigned, Panamera frustratedly commented that it was foolish, and everything seemed to be just a mockery. However, Vans started laughing, which further aggravated Panamera's anger. With a smile on his face, Vans explained that he was also silently dismissed from his former job. But despite that, he managed to build a prosperous village in just 3 months. The people who followed him from the kingdom did so because of his wisdom and talent, not just because Van's father ordered them to. Panamera still didn't fully comprehend the rapid progress the village was experiencing. Vans decided to show her in person how the construction of the new fortress wall was progressing. Both of them stepped out of the safety of the house and headed towards the location where the imposing barrier was being erected. As they walked, Espada, who was always aware of their conversation, decided to join them and demonstrate his magical ability. Without warning, Espada raised his hand and placed it on the ground, causing a wall to sprout from the earth in the blink of an eye. Vans, with his knowledge of alchemy, touched the magical construction and, with a touch of his hand, transformed it into a giant concrete door, covered with a sturdy metal coating. Panemra was amazed by what she had witnessed. She couldn't believe how Espada had instantly created a wall of earth and how Vans had turned that construction into a concrete door with just a touch. Immediately, she asked Vans what kind of magic that was. Vans smiled at Panemra's curiosity and explained that it was production magic. He then added that, unfortunately, in the current era, that magic no longer had any utility. Since she was young, Erat, the younger sister of Count Ferdinand, discovered her affinity for magic, but it was far from being the type of magic admired and respected in high society. Puppet manipulation. Her family despised her for this and considered her useless compared to her siblings. One day, Erat's father entrusted his loyal friend and companion, Panemra, with the task of taking care of her. While Panemra looked after Erat, her father asked Panemra if she knew of any suitors for his daughter since all her brothers had already married and he was worried about Erat's future. With this delegation of responsibility, Panemra became the confidante and protector of Erat, realizing she was the only person in the world who truly appreciated the young woman. On the other hand, Erat observed a talented young man named Vans, a prodigy in the art of magic. Despite his skill, Erat did not want to marry him. However, something within her was moved when she realized that she could create something significant with the magic that everyone considered useless. She began to envision a future in which she and Vans could work together and change the perceptions of their type of magic. Panemra, aware of Erat's feelings, decided to talk to Vans. She revealed her intention for him to marry Erat, but understood that this idea did not entirely please the young man. However, as Panemra described Vans' qualities, such as his concern for his subordinates and his proven talent, Vans began to change his mind. He understood that besides being a good match for Erat, he was also a good person who valued others. Erat confesses that she is still not ready for marriage, and at the same time, Vans mentions that he considers himself too young to take that step. However, Panemra intervenes in the conversation and starts listing the benefits that Erat would gain by marrying Vans. Furthermore, Panemra also references the benefits she herself would have by marrying him, which intrigues Vans. Panemra offers Vans a whole day to reflect on his decision and suggests they spend the night in a luxurious villa. Additionally, she suggests that Erat stay at Vans' house during that time. The comment causes Vans to blush as he understands the implications of two people of different genders sleeping together. However, Panemra quickly clarifies that she was just joking and that she would sleep next to Erat. Meanwhile, Vans, in an act of generosity, decides to build a hotel exclusively for Erat and Panemra to stay, instead of staying in an ordinary house. Ms. Till and Kamshin show their support for the idea of Vans marrying Erat. After a while, they decided to have dinner together and headed to a cozy restaurant. The food was exquisite, and between bites, Panemra, the waiter, joined the conversation. He praised the quality of the food and Vans for his choice. Erat smiled shyly, grateful for the kind gesture, but her mind was absorbed in the warm glow of Vans. When they finished dinner, they said goodbye to Panemra and left the restaurant. Erat felt that the perfect moment had arrived. She wanted to express her feelings towards Vans, to tell him how special he was in her life. However, the words seemed to be trapped in her throat, unable to come out. Anxiety began to take over Erat, until she couldn't hold back any longer and blurted everything out in a loud and rushed tone. "I'm so happy to have met you," she suddenly exclaimed, leaving Vans surprised but pleased. Without waiting for a response, Erat turned around and ran off, feeling a mix of excitement and fear inside her. Erat arrived at the hotel exhausted but excited to reunite with Panemra, her faithful companion in adventures. As she opened the door to her room, she was surprised to see her there, radiant as always. Emotion enveloped them as they embraced, remembering the dangers they had overcome together and the victories they had conquered. With a mischievous smile on her face, Panemra broke the silence and asked Erat if she had any plans for the future. Erat, although she had imagined the moment, still didn't have a clear answer. Her eyes sparkled with determination as she searched for the right words to give her companion a response. In his speech, Vans delegated the construction of the new protective walls to Espada, a loyal lieutenant who had always demonstrated his sword skills and leadership. The crowd applauded excitedly as Espada accepted the challenge with determination and honor. But that wasn't all. Vans also appointed Ordo, a young and skilled individual, as the responsible person for hunting magical creatures. In the midst of the hustle and excitement following Vans' speech, Panemra and Erat encountered Vans himself, who seemed to have shed his inhibitions and appeared more open. Isekai'd, finally liberated from his shyness, confessed to Vans that he wanted to see him work. This declaration surprised Vans, who accepted the request with a smile and nodded. Later, Panemra and Isekai'd were introduced to the Abdallas, a group of people whom Vans had to deal with to solve the wastewater problem. Among them, they also met a woman named Ladapriola. However, Vans quickly clarified to Panemra and Isekai'd that everything was a misunderstanding, and that Ladapriola was not his fiancée, dispelling any doubts that might have arisen. After that encounter, the group headed towards the place where the walls were being constructed. Panemra joined Isekai'd to help with the construction, while Vans, Isekai'd, Kamshin, and Ms. Till went ahead to test the ballista, a weapon that, according to Vans, had the same power as a magical creature. Hearing about the ballista, Panemra hurriedly ran to the location. However, upon arrival, Panemra was surprised to hear Vans explain that the ballista was actually just a weapon and had no magical powers. Despite the initial disappointment, Panemra showed interest in the construction of the weapon, but Vans revealed that it was a secret they had to keep. Impressed by the military power it represented, Panemra mentioned the idea of sending a letter to form an alliance between her kingdom and Vans, with an equal distribution of 50-50. Panemra was seeking new opportunities to strengthen her army. Meanwhile, Vans was in search of a unique discovery that would allow him to study and improve his own creation, the ballista. Panemra approached Vans, offering him a tempting deal. She promised to provide him with 100 soldiers for 2 weeks in exchange for borrowing one of his ballistas for her own study. Vans, cautious but interested in the offer, agreed. However, Kamshin, a brave warrior and confidant of Vans, saw the perfect opportunity to showcase the quality of his master. Kamshin took advantage of the conversation and proposed to Panemra that instead of bringing the ballistas, she should try the personally crafted arrows by Vans. He argued that their quality was unmatched. To prove their worth, Kamshin showed the sword that Vans had created for him. Intrigued by the suggestion, Panemra accepted the challenge. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived. Panemra and Kamshin met on the battlefield, armed with their respective swords. As they clashed for the first time, Kamshin's sword sliced through Panemra's, leaving everyone completely astonished. It was evident that the quality of Vans' creations exceeded all expectations. Impressed and captivated, Panemra turned to Vans to discuss the possibilities of the ballistas. Vans, filled with confidence, informed her that his arrows were capable of piercing not just 1, but 2 or even 3 dragon shells. This revelation left everyone in complete awe. While victory and achievements were celebrated in the kingdom, they took a brief break to congratulate Isekai'd, a young and brave warrior. They suggested that it would be a great honor for the kingdom if she accepted to marry Lord Vans. Excited by the prospect of a life together, Vans approached Isekai'd to discuss a different matter, the construction of the wall. With determination in his eyes, Vans assured Isekai'd that the wall would be ready within a month if no unforeseen events occurred. He wished to finish before the arrival of the merchant Lanthalas, who was expected to visit the kingdom soon. Vans knew that events were accelerating and the security of the kingdom depended on his ability to build an impenetrable wall. 2 weeks had passed since the construction of the triangular walls of the fortress began. Vans, grateful for Panemra's help in creating the main stronghold, expressed her gratitude in her mind. She also remembered that she had her own great main fortress, although referring to her skills as a leader and strategist. Suddenly, from the distance, someone shouted that they were being chased by a dragon. Everyone was surprised that the danger had reached such a remote area. Ordo, who seemed to be in imminent danger, alerted the group about the situation, and Vans made the decision to use the ballistae to protect them. The plan was to close the point of entry once Ordo and his company were safely inside the fortress. Panemra bravely joined the attack against the forest dragon and sent Rut to fetch 10 additional men. Although Isekai'd was very scared, Vans reassured her that everything would be fine. The dragon approached quickly, and Vans ordered to aim at its wings with the ballistae. Ordo and his company tried to throw knives at the dragon, but their attempts proved to be ineffective. The situation seemed complicated. In a moment of desperation, the brave leader of the group, Orton, made a bold decision. He ordered the fastest runner to mount a horse and act as bait to distract the dragon while the others escaped. Without hesitation, the fearless rider galloped away, capturing the attention of the fearsome winged creature. Meanwhile, at the front of the defensive wall, the powerful sorceress Panemra stood resolute. Unleashing her unparalleled fire magic, she launched fiery blasts at the dragon, forcing its huge jaws back and making it reconsider its attack. With great precision, the defenders' ballistae fired at the dragon's body, managing to hit its battered wings. With a quick reload, they launched a second volley, but this time it didn't cause any harm. However, Orton managed to escape unscathed thanks to the sacrifice of the horseback runner, and Panamera sought to gain some time with her powerful fire spells to allow the civilians to evacuate the village. Concentrating her energies, she unleashed a fire attack with such might that it directly hit the dragon's body, momentarily pushing it back. Seizing this opportunity, she quickly headed to the village to prepare a counterattack. But the dragon didn't give up easily. Despite having damaged wings, it managed to climb over the wall with relentless determination. As the defenders regrouped and prepared for the imminent attack, a brave warrior named Isekai'd took the lead. With his sword held high and a heart filled with courage, he faced the dragon head-on. The grand ceremony was about to begin. The noble Isekai'd family, led by their powerful matriarch Panamera, was getting ready to present the highly anticipated award. The atmosphere was filled with excitement and anticipation, as everyone had heard of the brave knight from the noble Feltio family. Taking the stage, Panamera addressed the crowd, assuring them that the damages caused by the battle were minimal, and luckily, no casualties were reported. She thanked D for his unparalleled bravery in beheading the fearsome dragon that ravaged the land. The noble knight from the Feltio family, D, received honors and applause from everyone present. His swordsmanship and use of powerful magical moves had made him a key figure in defining the fight against the dragon. His skill with the sword and spells had been instrumental in defeating the beast and protecting the people. However, the surprise was yet to come. Panamera announced the next deserving recipient, acknowledging the achievements of Vans Feltio, the fourth son of the noble Feltio family. Despite being just 8 years old, his incredible knowledge, strategy, and wisdom had made him a crucial piece in the battle against the forest dragon. Vansny had showcased an unparalleled ability to wield a magic never seen before in that world. In a short amount of time, he had built and fortified the defenses of the village, creating an impenetrable system against any threat. His stunning strategy and wise decision-making had made him the undisputed leader in the fight against the forces of evil. Blushing and humble, Vans realized he had become a symbol of hope and courage for all the inhabitants of his village. His boldness and bravery had left an indelible mark on the hearts of those around him.